The Mets just acquired a back-end reliever who's going to be an immediate upgrade to a bullpen that could use some more solidification heading into a hopefully deep October run for Mets fans, as Tyler Rogers, whose brother actually just got traded in the Brian Hayes deal just about an hour before this trade went down, is heading to the New York Mets in exchange for a couple of players that the Giants hope can help propel them back to the championship realm that they had experienced from 2010 to 2014. This is a really interesting deal, as we've had two brothers traded on the first day, twin brothers nonetheless, for the first time in MLB history based on my research. That could be incorrect, but I have not seen that reported anywhere so far. And the Mets shore up their bullpen in a move to go all in and win this year, as Rogers will be a free agent at the end of the year. And one of the people with the funkiest delivery in all of Major League Baseball is heading to New York to hopefully win a World Series ring. In exchange for the last year of Rogers, the Mets paid actually a pretty hefty price, including two players who have already made their Major League debut and a player they acquired in the Justin Verlander deal a couple years back. So a very hefty price to get a reliever who has not necessarily closed a ton, but could definitely provide a lot of back-end experience for the Mets as they go ahead and try and win the World Series this year. And the Giants having a very interesting deadline where they're maybe selling, maybe buying. This is a good mediocre move where they're getting some major league talent while also restocking the farm with some players close to the major league level, as one had made their major league debut this year, and the other is currently in AAA and could very easily make his debut later on in 2025. In this video, we'll dive into the trade that just happened a little bit ago. All four players involved, get you insight on all of them, and also give trade grades to each side of the deal so you can learn a little bit more about the players either heading to your team, heading out of your team, and see exactly what maybe an in-division rival is doing so you can be better understanding of Major League Baseball as a whole as the 2025 postseason rapidly approaches. If you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to help out. We'll get you more trade deadline coverage for this entire deadline, and we get more great baseball content, not only from me, but from other great creators out there as well. Without further ado, let's dive into this deal and see exactly how each team made out and what each of the four players involved brings to the table. Although Rogers has not closed any games so far this year, he used to be a closer back in 2021. He had 13 saves and actually had the most in the National Leagues with 80 games played. Same in 2020 with 29 in terms of relievers. He has led the major leagues actually this year and last year with 77 and 53 games played so far. So he's had a lot of usage. We'll see how the Mets want to dial that back. Across 50 innings pitched so far in 2025, he has a 1.8 ERA. He doesn't strike out a ton of guys, even though he does have that funky delivery, 6.8 K per nine. But he also doesn't walk a lot of guys, which is not necessarily abnormal for relievers, but definitely a little bit out of place, only walking 0.7 per nine, which is definitely very solid. I think what might be his most impressive stat is his walks and hits per innings pitched, which is a very low 0.86, which is just incredible. Again, relievers tend to walk a lot of guys because they have nasty stuff, but their control generally lacks, especially the back end guys. The fact you have someone who's limiting opposing teams to less than a walk or hit per inning pitch is really, really impressive. And he will slot very easily into the back end of a Mets bullpen that doesn't necessarily need another lefty now that they acquired Gregory Soto a couple days ago, but definitely can't hurt, as Rogers is someone, because of his funky delivery, does well against both sides of the plate. He's also been very good just throughout his career. Again, in his 2021 year where he did have 13 saves, pitched in 80 games, he had 2.5 BWAR, a 7.1 record, 2.22 ERA. And though 2022 and 2023 were a little bit less effective, a 111 and 138 ERA plus respectively, meaning he was 11% and 38% better than league average based solely on ERA. He's been a very good pitcher overall. Those are still, again, above average. And although he has been very dominant this year, which is a little bit of a far cry from previous years, just because he's been good, not as good this year, this is a really interesting addition. He is on an expiring contract, so the Mets do not have his services beyond this year, but he's only making $5.2 million, and that's across the whole year. So prorated to currently, he's probably going to make around 2.5 during his time with the Mets. So relatively cheap, and they could sign him to an extension if they really want to, given that their competitive window is right now, given that they have a relatively young team, and they just signed Juan Soto to such a huge contract. The MLB player heading back to the Giants in this deal is starting pitcher Jose Butto, who's already on a very cheap deal. The Mets actually are paying almost 2/3 of that down. He's still in his pre-arbitration stage, and he has 2 more years of arbitration after that. So he's definitely going to be very cheap, and is someone that the Giants can rely on for multiple years beyond just 2025, as they have again another young team, some players on the cusp of making their major league debut that should be impact players. This is a very interesting addition for the San Francisco Giants. 2024 was Butto's breakout year. He put up 2.2 WAR, a 7-3 record, a 2.55 ERA, striking out 9.6 batters per nine, and he did walk a lot, 4.6, but definitely a very solid year in 2024. His first real true start in the major leagues, as he only had played in 10 games before that, for a total of 46 innings pitched. So a very good showing there. So far in 2025, he's been solid across 34 games. None of them starts, actually. He pitched 47 innings to a 3.64 ERA, a 3-2 record, which is just about league average in terms of ERA plus. But his fielding independent pitching, which looks at how a pitcher does if you remove some of the variability of the fact that people are different defensively, it's a little bit lower at a 3.37, so definitely solid numbers there. Striking out a little bit less at 7.9 strikeouts per nine, but also walking a little less at 4.2. The gap is definitely a little bit lower this year. His strikeout to walk ratio is the lowest of his career at 1.86 if you exclude the 9 games he played in 2023. So not really a great sample there in terms of some of his peripherals, but he's definitely been a very good pitcher so far this year. Going to Baseball Reference, only 0.2 WAR, but the numbers itself show that he's been able to get batters out so far this year. The 10th overall prospect in the Met system, according to Baseball America and MLB Pipeline at the beginning of the year, is Blade Tidwell, who is the first piece in terms of prospects that are heading back to San Francisco in this deal. He's already made his major league debut, but he is pitching in AAA right now. But he is definitely someone who has a starter mix and someone who could be pitching in the major leagues later this season for the Giants should they still want to make that push, which based on the players they've acquired in this deal, definitely seems like the case. He's 24, 6'4", 207, and he has a 5-pitch mix. The slider is definitely his main calling card. It's his best pitch by far, and is something that hitters always have to be aware of when they go and face Tidwell in the box. He's also got a very solid fastball that's also a little bit above average, and his other 3 offerings, a cutter, about average, changeup, probably slightly below average, and a curveball, probably a minus pitch, which is why it's not thrown as much. Round out a repertoire of 5 pitches for someone who is starting is always good. You generally need to have at least 3 that are decent, and he has that, and a couple more to at least throw batters off that he can pitch every once in a while in that curveball and changeup. So definitely a really solid pitch mix for Tidwell. Again, that sweeper is definitely his best pitch and something that more pitchers have added on. And he actually follows a similar trend that a lot of Mets pitching prospects have. I'm thinking of Brandon Sproat as the example, as he had a shoulder issue before being selected by the Mets out of the University of Tennessee in the 2022 draft in the second round, and did end up signing for an well above flat $1.85 million. And he was a strikeout machine when he first joined the Mets system in the minor leagues, which was a really promising sign. And he continues to strike out a lot of batters. So far in AAA this year, across 79 innings pitched, he struck out 87, which is very impressive for someone who started. Did come out of the bullpen 3 times, but not a huge issue. So far at the major league level, 15 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts, but he also has walked 10 batters. So there is a little bit of concern there. But Tidwell is definitely a very interesting player to look at going forward. With a solid 4-seamer that averages around 95, a good sweeper, and a couple other pitchers in decent control, he's definitely on the path to be a solid 4 or 5 starter at the major league level, maybe even a number 3 starter based on how things evolve. He is decently old given that he is 24 for a prospect, but he has the potential to be a very good starting pitcher going forward, and if he really needs to, could be a middle leverage, maybe lower high leverage reliever based on the fact that he does have 2+ pitches in his repertoire. The Giants must have really liked that 2022 draft class because Drew Gilbert, an outfielder who the Mets acquired in the deal that sent Justin Verlander to the Houston Astros, is also coming to San Francisco in this deal. Gilbert was also ironically drafted out of the University of Tennessee, so maybe the Giants have a little bit of an affinity for that based on what they've done so far with this deal. He's also 24, a lefty who is 5'9", 195, who really can be a center fielder at the big league level, which is great given the fact that the Giants do have a lot of outfield space that they want to peruse in center field in Triples Alley. So Junku Lee, obviously another good defensive center fielder. They're adding to that depth there. Ability to have off days, ability to shift people around based on who's pitching, definitely valuable. Gilbert is able to hit for decent average, can steal some bases, but again, that defense really is his calling card, where he really is going to be benefiting the most is defensively. He's not going to be a huge offensive threat. For example, so far in AAA, through 82 games, he has a 243, 347, 430 average across, again, 82 games. That's a 777 OPS. In terms of home runs and steals, he has 12 home runs, a solid number so far, only 4 steals. Expect that to tick up a little bit in the major league level. Not sure exactly why he hasn't stolen as many bases. The Mets might just not be that aggressive. So we'll see exactly what that entails in San Francisco, but I could easily see him being an 8-10 steal guy at the major league level. He's definitely not lacking in any area. You can't look at his power and say, oh, he's not going to hit for a decent number of home runs. You can't look at his hit tool and say there's significant risk there. There's still some, but there's not significant risk there. And his fielding ability is definitely plus. He can stick in center field, and that's aided by the fact that he does have a very strong arm. He will be able to gun runners out from center field. Maybe they shift him to a corner position as he first gets adjusted, but in the long term, he could definitely be a center fielder in San Francisco. He was recovering from a hamstring injury he sustained in 2024, but the fact that he is able to play all 4 outfield spots has seemingly fully recovered from that. And the fact that he is going to be a solid player all around can easily make me see him be a solid 5, 6, 7 hole hitter during his major league career. Maybe even a 1 or 2 if he can keep the walk rates up and be an effective major leaguer for San Francisco for a long time to come. His prospect sheen has worn off since he's been drafted. There was a lot of hype from him coming out of Tennessee. A little bit of surprise that he fell all the way down to the Astros in that 22 draft. But at the end of the day, Gilbert should be a solid player. Right now, he's 14th on Baseball America's list of top 30 prospects. And is definitely someone that, if I'm a Giants fan, I would keep an eye on to make their major league debut later this year. Now that we've talked about all the players in this deal, let's give each team a grade and talk about how this actually affects the teams that are now going to be playing with these players. I'm going to give the Giants an A plus for this deal. I am kind of surprised at the value they're able to get for Tyler Rogers. It's not Camilo Doval. Brandy Rodriguez has been someone who's been another higher leverage reliever. And it's not like Tyler Rogers has been bad by any means, but I did not expect someone on an expiring contract who is not necessarily a top of the line guy to yield the kind of really solid multi package return that the Mets actually gave up. It's one thing to have one solid prospect and one minor prospect, but they gave up a guy who's making a decent impact at the major league level and 2 guys who are proximity plays but could still be solid additions to a major league lineup. I think the Mets definitely gave up a lot for this, and I'm trying to look at where they fit in with the Giants, and I think there's a lot of space for them to actually fit in. Mike Yastrzemski is also a lefty, which complicates things a little bit with Gilbert. He plays mostly right field. Same with Jung Hoo Lee, who's also a lefty. And Helio Ramos has been almost a mainstay at the top of the lineup. So maybe there's not an exact fit there in terms of the fact that now you have 3 lefty outfielders, not to mention Brett Wisely can also play a little bit of outfield. Luis Matos is a righty on your bench, former top prospect, highly regarded top prospect. So there is a little bit of flexibility there, but I'm curious, maybe Yastrzemski is on the move. There has been a little bit of chatter about that. He's also going to be 35 in a little bit, so we'll see exactly how that will all play out at the end of the day. But it is really interesting to see how that's going to fit together. And in terms of their rotation, they desperately need arms. There's been a ton of injuries in the rotation so far. Landon Roop is on the DL right now. Eric Miller is a reliever, also on the DL, but their rotation is just not done great. And so Butto and now Blade Tidwell can come in potentially at times this year and support a pitching staff that could really use a little bit more support, especially given how Justin Verlander has lost so many games after being dominant for such a long stretch of time. Even though I just hyped up the Giants and how well they did, I don't really hate this for the Mets. I'm going to give this a B for them. I think they had a lot of players who they didn't necessarily need to keep going into next year, and players that they would have to protect on the Rule 5 draft who aren't going to be immediate impacts. If you look at the rotation, they have a really solid rotation right now, and that's including Griffin Canning having a career year, being injured and out for the year. Tyler McGill, Christian Scott also on the 60-day injured list. Paul Blackburn on the 15-day injured list. You go to the minor leagues, and there's still some starting pitchers who are interesting. Brandon Sproat, former top prospect, has struggled a little bit this year, but still highly regarded. Nolan McLean is another top 100 prospect. Both those players in AAA don't need to be protected from the Rule 5 draft this year, but still interesting. Jonathan Pintaro, Justin Hageman, Dom Hamill, another group of interesting guys who could potentially start at the major league level if they really needed to. And when I look at someone like Tidwell and Butto, was there really necessarily a place? There could have been if they really stepped it up, but at the end of the day, these aren't huge losses for the Mets. And when you look at their outfield situation, Brandon Nimmo, long-term. Juan Soto, definitely long-term. Jeff McNeil, debatable how he's doing. Definitely had an interesting year. I think the luck of BABIP is definitely something interesting. But there's been talks of Starling Marte and Tyrone Taylor, right? What's going to happen there? Marte may be traded. Taylor is he really doing that great this year? Time to could really tell there. But Drew Gilbert could have played center field long term, which is an issue for the Mets right now, as have many Mets fans have discussed. So that's a little bit of a knock against them as well. But I don't hate this deal. I think they can still find a center fielder somewhere else and really improve that position while trading away someone at that spot. Again, Gilbert, I personally really like him. I know some people are more cold on him. So I will go ahead and try to give you the consensus that he could be a solid player, but he's not going to be excelling every day at the major league level, being an all-star every year. So I'll give them that, but I do think there was some room for them to actually acquire someone else to play center field this year and give the reins to Gilbert next year. So thanks for going and watching to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to help me out, get you more content like this from me and other great creators as well. And without further ado, I hope to see you in the very next video.